The world moves fast, and the mind moves even faster. We are constantly running, chasing success, chasing approval, chasing meaning. Yet the more we chase, the further we drift from the very thing we seek: peace. To practice presence is to stop running. It is to return to the only moment that ever truly exists, this one. The past has already dissolved, the future has not yet arrived, and all that is real lives here in the now. When you are present, life stops being something you think about and becomes something you feel. Every breath, every sound, every sensation becomes alive with quiet awareness. Presence is not a skill to master, it is your natural state, waiting to be remembered. The mind resists this truth. It is addicted to motion, to planning, to comparing. It believes that peace lies somewhere else, in the next goal, the next relationship, the next accomplishment. But peace does not exist in time, it exists in presence. You cannot think your way into it. You can only return to it by becoming still enough to notice it has always been here. Practicing presence means seeing the mind's movement without being carried by it. You observe thoughts rise and fall like waves, emotions come and go like clouds, and through it all, something within you remains untouched. That something is awareness, silent, steady, unbroken. To empty the mind does not mean to destroy thought, but to free yourself from its control. The mind is a tool, but for most people it has become the master. It whispers endlessly, judging, analyzing, fearing, remembering, and we believe every word it says. The noise becomes so constant that silence feels unnatural. Yet the moment you stop clinging to thought, even for a breath, a quiet space opens. In that space, you meet yourself, not the image you've built, but the essence that simply is. Emptying the mind is not about losing anything, it is about releasing what never belonged to you. The stories, the worries, the endless commentary that clouds awareness. When the mind is empty, the heart becomes full of stillness, full of life. Presence requires discipline, but not effort. It is not about forcing silence, but remembering stillness. Every time you bring your attention back, to the sound of your breath, to the feeling of your feet on the ground, to the rhythm of your heartbeat, you are returning home. Even in chaos, presence is possible. The body may move, the world may shout, yet within, there can be silence. The stillness behind all movement does not need the world to be quiet. It is quiet by nature. You cannot possess it, you can only surrender to it. When you practice presence, the ordinary becomes sacred. The taste of water, the sound of rain, the pause between words, all become gateways to awareness. You begin to see that life does not need to be different, it only needs to be noticed. Each moment holds the entire truth of existence, if you are awake enough to see it. The mind always says, I need more. Presence whispers, you already have it. The more you practice, the more life slows down, not because the world changes, but because you stop racing ahead of it. You begin to live, not as a thinker of life, but as a participant in it. To practice presence is to reclaim your power from thought. To empty the mind is to uncover the vast silence beneath it. In that silence, there is no fear, no past, no future, only awareness, pure and infinite. From that awareness comes true strength, not the strength to control life, but the strength to be fully alive within it. Every moment becomes an opportunity to return, to breathe, to see clearly. The mind will try to pull you back into noise, but awareness will always be waiting, patient and eternal, reminding you that you were never lost, only distracted. Presence is not somewhere you go, it is where you already are, once you stop looking elsewhere. The power of presence is one of the most profound abilities a human being can cultivate. It is not about doing more or achieving greater things. It is about awakening to what is already here. Presence means being completely absorbed in this very moment, aware of the breath, the body, and the subtle rhythm of life unfolding. When one is present, there is no separation between the observer and what is being observed. The chatter of the mind fades into the background, and what remains is clarity, simplicity, and peace. In that state, life stops feeling like a struggle and begins to flow naturally. The moment you are fully here, you discover that there is no need to chase happiness, because presence itself is the source of it. The mind is constantly running, replaying the past, predicting the future, calculating what could go wrong, and imagining what should have been. It lives in time, not in reality. Presence is the act of stepping out of this mental loop and returning to the timeless now. In this space, the mind softens and awareness expands. You begin to hear the sound of the wind again, notice the warmth of sunlight on your skin, and feel your own heartbeat grounding you in existence. This awareness may seem small, but it carries immense power. It dissolves the illusion that life is happening somewhere else. The truth is, life is only ever happening now. The power of presence transforms how one experiences pain, success, relationships, and even solitude. When you are present, problems lose their heaviness because you no longer carry them as stories. You see them simply as passing events. You stop fighting life and begin to move with it. Presence brings intelligence to action. When your attention is fully here, every decision arises from clarity instead of confusion. You do what needs to be done without overthinking, and your actions become effortless yet precise. This is the essence of mastery, not control, but alignment. Presence also dissolves fear, for fear can only exist in the imagination of the future. When the mind projects into what might happen, anxiety takes hold. But in the now, fear cannot survive. The present moment is simple, direct, and free of mental noise. In presence, you find yourself untouched by external circumstances. You realize that peace is not something you achieve through control, but something you uncover by letting go. The mind tries to possess peace, but peace appears only when the mind surrenders. To practice presence is to remember yourself in every moment, to bring awareness back from wandering thoughts into the simplicity of what is happening right now. Whether you are walking, eating, or listening, the invitation is the same. Feel it completely. Be there. Notice the movement of your breath as it enters and leaves. Observe how sensations rise and fade. Watch thoughts appear and disappear without judgment. Through this awareness, you begin to see the impermanence of everything, and instead of clinging, you start appreciating. Life becomes vivid. Colors seem brighter, sounds clearer, emotions deeper yet lighter. The power of presence also opens the door to compassion. When you are present, you see others without the filter of judgment or expectation. You recognize that every person, like you, is caught between thoughts, emotions, and desires. This understanding softens the heart. You begin to listen not just to words but to silence behind them. You respond, not react. Relationships deepen because presence brings authenticity, a quiet honesty that doesn't need to prove or defend. You are simply there, fully aware, fully alive. In presence, time slows down. The rush to reach the next moment fades because you see that there is nowhere else to go. Every experience, even the most ordinary, becomes sacred when met with full attention. The way light falls through a window, the sound of footsteps on the ground, the space between one breath and the next, all reveal the quiet miracle of existence that was always there but unnoticed. Presence is not something to seek, it is something to remember. It is the essence of being, the still point within the movement of life, where everything begins and everything ends, yet nothing is ever lost. Silencing inner noise is not about forcing the mind to be quiet, but about learning to listen to it without being pulled into its constant stream. The human mind is like a restless ocean. Thoughts rise and fall like waves, emotions move like tides, and if you do not learn to observe them, you drown in their movement. The noise within comes from endless thinking, from replaying the past, imagining the future, comparing, judging, regretting, and fearing. It creates a fog that separates you from reality. Most people live lost in this fog, reacting to every thought as if it were truth. But once you begin to see the noise for what it is, mere movement of the mind, you start to find stillness behind it. The first step in silencing inner noise is awareness. You cannot stop something you do not see. Begin by observing your mind without judgment. Notice how it jumps from one thought to another, how it creates stories, arguments, and worries. Simply watch it, the way you would watch clouds passing across the sky. When you become the observer, you are no longer the noise itself. There is a small gap between you and the mind, and that gap is peace. Every time you notice your thoughts without reacting, the noise loses a little of its power over you. What was once overwhelming becomes transparent, and you begin to recognize the difference between the mind's chatter and your true self. Inner noise thrives on attention. The more energy you give to thoughts, the louder they become. When you feed a worry by thinking about it again and again, you strengthen it. But if you allow it to pass without giving it energy, it fades naturally. Silence is not created by suppressing thought. It is revealed when you stop clinging to it. Like a pond settling after being disturbed, the mind becomes clear when it is left alone. This clarity does not come through effort, but through letting go of effort. Trying to silence the mind with force only creates more noise, because even the struggle to be silent is a form of resistance. True stillness appears when you stop trying to control and start allowing. Breath is one of the most powerful tools to quiet inner noise. Every breath is a bridge between body and mind, between chaos and calm. When you focus your attention on the rhythm of breathing, you anchor yourself in the present moment. Thoughts may still arise, but they no longer carry you away. You begin to feel the difference between thinking and being. Breathing consciously slows the pace of thoughts, softens tension in the body, and opens space for awareness to expand. In that space, silence begins to bloom naturally, not as an absence of sound, but as a deep sense of stillness that exists beneath all mental activity. Silencing inner noise also requires honesty. Much of the noise inside is created by resistance, resisting emotions, denying pain, pretending to be calm while chaos brews underneath. Presence means allowing everything to be as it is. When sadness comes, let it be felt. When anger arises, see it without judging it as good or bad. The more you resist emotions, the louder they scream for attention. The more you accept them, the sooner they dissolve. Silence grows in the soil of acceptance. It is born from surrender, not from control. Once you allow yourself to experience life without hiding, without masks, the mind begins to quiet down on its own, because it no longer needs to protect or defend an image. The inner noise is not your enemy, it is your teacher. It shows you where you are still attached, where you are still afraid, where you still cling to identity. Every time you observe your thoughts without being carried away, you strengthen awareness. Every time you choose silence over reaction, you purify the mind a little more. Gradually, the space between thoughts widens, and in that space, you start to sense a deep stillness that has always been there. The noise was never the problem, forgetting the silence beneath it was. The mind will continue to produce thoughts as long as you live, but your relationship with it changes. Instead of being a prisoner of thought, you become its witness, and in that witnessing, the inner noise loses its grip, revealing the quiet strength of a mind that has finally remembered how to be still. Emptiness is often misunderstood as a void, a place of nothing, a state of absence. Yet in truth, emptiness is not nothingness. It is the space in which everything arises and dissolves. It is the quiet field that holds all forms of life without becoming any of them. To experience emptiness is not to fall into darkness, but to awaken to the vastness of being. The mind, in its constant craving for definition and control, fears emptiness because it cannot grasp it. The mind wants to label, to possess, to understand through words. But emptiness is beyond all definitions. It is not something that can be owned or described. It can only be experienced when the noise of thought quiets down and awareness stands alone, pure and unoccupied. When the mind is full, it leaves no room for wisdom. Thoughts, judgments, and beliefs clutter the space of consciousness, like furniture crowding a small room. There is no space to move, no space to breathe. Emptiness is the clearing away of this clutter, not by force but through understanding. You begin to see that every thought you hold is temporary, that every identity you wear is fragile. The more you release, the more space you find within yourself. In that space, creativity blooms, intuition awakens, and peace becomes natural. To empty the mind is not to erase thought, but to stop clinging to it. You allow everything to come and go freely, and in that allowing, freedom appears on its own. Emptiness is presence without attachment. It is the awareness that observes without needing to interfere. When you are empty, you are not distracted by the stories of the mind or the emotions that rise and fall. You are like a mirror, reflecting everything yet holding on to nothing. The mirror is not affected by what it reflects. Whether it shows beauty or ugliness, light or shadow, it remains untouched. Likewise, the state of emptiness allows you to witness life fully without being controlled by it. You feel emotions deeply, but they pass through you like wind through open space. There is no resistance, no clinging, no fear of losing what must go. In emptiness, life moves freely, and you move with it. Many people equate emptiness with loneliness or lack, but they are not the same. Loneliness comes from separation, emptiness reveals connection. When you are empty of ego and desire, you become full of life itself. You sense the unity of all things, how every breath, every sound, every person is part of one continuous movement. There is no you and them, no inner and outer, no grasping for meaning, because meaning is already present in the experience itself. Emptiness opens the heart because it dissolves the barriers built by the mind. Without those walls, compassion flows naturally, not as an act of effort, but as a natural expression of being. Emptiness also brings clarity. When the mind is crowded with opinions and expectations, perception becomes distorted. You see not what is, but what you want or fear to see. In emptiness, perception becomes pure. You meet each moment as it is, without the filter of the past. This clarity does not depend on knowledge or experience, it comes from stillness. The silent mind sees directly, without interpretation, and in that direct seeing lies truth. From this state, even simple things reveal depth. The sound of rain, the movement of leaves, the stillness of the night. Each carries a quiet message of the same truth. Nothing is missing. Nothing needs to be added. To embrace emptiness is to release the illusion of control. Life does not need to be held together by thought. The river of existence flows with or without your interference. The more you try to grasp it, the more it slips through your hands. But when you allow yourself to be empty, you move with the current instead of against it. Emptiness is not cold or lifeless. It is spacious, alive, and endlessly creative. It is the open sky in which all clouds come and go. When the sky does not cling to the clouds, it remains vast and clear. In the same way, when you no longer cling to the contents of your mind, you discover the infinite openness that has always been within you, silent, steady, and free. Awareness over reaction is the difference between living consciously and being dragged by the patterns of the mind. Most people do not act, they react. A word, a look, or a situation triggers a flood of emotion, and before awareness can arise, the body has already moved, the mouth has already spoken, the decision has already been made. Reaction is automatic, mechanical, born from habit and memory. Awareness, on the other hand, is deliberate, spacious, and alive. It creates a pause, a moment between stimulus and response, where clarity has the chance to enter. In that pause, you are no longer a prisoner of circumstance. You are a participant in your own consciousness. The mind is conditioned to protect, to defend, to seek comfort, and avoid pain. This conditioning creates an instant reflex to respond to life based on old experiences. Someone criticizes you, and anger rises before thought can intervene. Someone praises you, and pride blooms instantly. These reactions are not conscious choices. They are patterns replaying themselves. To live in awareness means to watch these patterns unfold without immediately obeying them. You begin to observe your inner world the same way you would watch clouds move across the sky. Anger comes, but instead of being consumed by it, you notice it as energy rising in the body. Fear appears, and instead of running, you witness how it feels. In that witnessing, reaction loses its power because awareness dissolves identification. Awareness brings light to what is unconscious. It reveals how much of human behavior is driven not by freedom but by habit. When you are unaware, you live as a collection of reactions shaped by memory. Awareness interrupts this cycle. It allows you to choose your response instead of being controlled by impulse. This does not mean suppressing emotion or pretending to be calm. It means recognizing emotion as it arises and letting it pass without adding a story. The mind wants to explain, to justify, to blame, but awareness simply watches. This silent observation is strength. It does not fight, it does not flee, it simply sees. And in seeing, transformation begins. Reaction feeds conflict while awareness ends it. When two people react to each other, their words become weapons, their silence becomes walls. But when one person remains aware, the chain of reaction breaks. Awareness disarms anger because it does not resist it. It listens. It understands that every reaction in another person is a reflection of their own struggle. When you stay present, you stop contributing to the storm. You become a still point within chaos, and from that stillness, clarity arises naturally. You begin to speak with intention, to act with compassion, and to make choices that do not create further suffering. This is not weakness, it is mastery. Awareness is also the foundation of inner freedom. A reactive mind is a restless one, constantly pulled by emotion and thought. Awareness brings steadiness, not by suppressing movement, but by witnessing it. You start to notice the subtle gap between what happens and how you feel about it. That gap is where power lies. You can choose patience instead of anger, understanding instead of judgment, silence instead of noise. This choice is not made through control but through presence. When awareness fills the mind, reaction fades because there is no longer anyone left to defend. The ego reacts, awareness does not. Practicing awareness requires patience. The mind will resist, it will fall back into habit, it will forget. But each time you remember to observe instead of react, you strengthen consciousness. Over time, this awareness spreads into every part of life. How you speak, how you listen, how you move, how you breathe. Even in moments of difficulty, you find a quiet watcher within, a presence that sees everything without becoming it. Awareness does not seek to change what is happening, it transforms the way you experience it. You begin to realize that peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of awareness amidst it. Reaction keeps you trapped in the surface of life, bouncing between pleasure and pain, gain and loss. Awareness allows you to sink deeper, to experience life as it is, raw and immediate, without distortion. In that depth, understanding grows, and understanding naturally becomes compassion, not as an idea but as a way of being. The discipline of stillness is the quiet art of mastering the mind through patience, consistency, and awareness. It is not the suppression of thought or emotion, but the cultivation of presence within movement. Stillness is not something that happens by accident. It is trained, refined, and deepened through daily practice. The body can be still, yet the mind may race endlessly. True stillness begins within, where attention rests gently, undistracted by the pull of noise or desire. It is the ability to remain unmoved while life moves around you, to observe without grasping, to breathe without rushing, to exist without chasing. This discipline is subtle, yet it transforms the entire quality of one's being. In a world filled with distraction, stillness feels unnatural at first. The moment silence appears, the mind becomes restless. It searches for something to do, something to think about, something to fix. The mind thrives on movement because movement gives it identity. To sit in stillness is to take away that identity, to face the rawness of being without the comfort of distraction. That is why stillness requires discipline. It is not easy to sit quietly and do nothing while thoughts demand attention. It takes courage to meet the mind as it is, chaotic, impatient, and full of noise. But through this meeting, transformation begins. Each time you sit, breathe, and allow, the storm loses its force. The waves continue to rise, but you no longer drown in them. Discipline is not about control, it is about consistency. You do not force the mind to be silent, you train it by returning to presence again and again. Just as the body becomes strong through repetition, the mind becomes calm through daily practice. Every moment of stillness builds stability. Every breath taken in awareness strengthens the connection to the present. You may fail 1,000 times, but even failure becomes part of the discipline. Each return to stillness is an act of strength. Over time, the space between thoughts expands, and the grip of restlessness loosens. What once felt like struggle begins to feel natural. Stillness grows not from perfection, but from persistence. The discipline of stillness also teaches humility. You realize how little control you truly have over the movements of the mind. Thoughts appear uninvited, emotions rise without warning, and sensations shift constantly. The more you try to hold on to them, the more they resist. The mind cannot be tamed through force, it must be understood through observation. The disciplined practitioner learns to watch without interference, to accept each moment without judgment. In that quiet acceptance, the mind softens. It begins to settle like dust in still air, revealing the clarity beneath. The more you practice, the less effort is needed. Stillness becomes not something you do, but something you are. Stillness is also discipline in motion. It is not limited to meditation or quiet sitting. It extends into every action, walking, eating, working, speaking. To be still within movement is the highest form of practice. It means to act without hurry, to move with awareness, to let each gesture carry presence. The disciplined mind does not rush to the next moment, it inhabits this one completely. You begin to notice that even in chaos, there is a space of calm underneath. The more you connect with that space, the more it shapes your actions. Life becomes smoother, less reactive, more balanced. This is the strength that comes from stillness, not the strength of resistance, but the strength of presence. Discipline also reveals that stillness is not emptiness, it is fullness without noise. When the surface becomes calm, you start to sense the depth of existence. You begin to hear the silence that holds every sound, the space that surrounds every movement. This awareness changes how you experience the world. You no longer seek peace as something outside yourself. You see it as the natural expression of a quiet mind. The discipline of stillness refines perception, allowing you to see clearly, listen deeply, and act wisely. Over time, you start to recognize that true power does not come from constant doing, but from the ability to remain still amidst doing, to hold awareness steady while everything else changes, and to trust that in stillness, nothing is missing. Freedom from the inner storm is not achieved by escaping chaos, but by learning to remain unmoved within it. Life is unpredictable, emotions shift like weather, and thoughts arise like sudden winds. The mind reacts to every change, clinging to what feels good, resisting what feels painful, and fearing what it cannot control. This constant reaction creates turbulence inside, the storm of anxiety, anger, doubt, and desire. To find freedom is not to suppress this movement, but to discover a still point within it, a center untouched by the waves of emotion. This stillness does not come through avoidance, but through deep understanding of one's own nature. When you stop fighting the storm and begin to watch it, you realize that the storm is not who you are. The inner storm begins with attachment. The mind holds onto ideas, identities, expectations, and outcomes. It fears loss and resists change, yet both are part of existence. Every thought of, "this should not be," fuels the wind that keeps the storm alive. The more you resist what is happening, the stronger the disturbance grows. Freedom begins the moment you allow everything to be as it is. This does not mean surrendering to passivity, but releasing the need to control what cannot be controlled. When you stop trying to change the moment, you find space within it. That space is peace, not because the storm has ended, but because you no longer identify with it. You become the open sky that holds the storm, vast and unbroken, while clouds of thought and emotion move through. The practice of awareness is the anchor that steadies the ship in the middle of the storm. Awareness does not stop the waves, it keeps you from being thrown by them. When anger rises, awareness sees it. When fear appears, awareness feels it fully. The storm loses power when it is observed without resistance. What feeds the storm is identification, the belief that you are the anger, the sadness, the fear. But when you watch from awareness, you see that these are passing states, not your essence. The energy of emotion may still move through you, but it no longer defines you. You can feel deeply without being lost in feeling. This is freedom, not numbness, but clarity within intensity. Inner freedom also requires patience. The storm of the mind has been forming for years through habits, memories, and unprocessed emotions. It will not calm instantly. Stillness must be practiced with gentleness, not as a battle but as an invitation. Each time you return to the present moment, you remind yourself that you are not the noise inside. Each breath becomes an act of grounding. Breathing with awareness reconnects you to the body, to the simplicity of now, and slowly the force of the storm begins to fade. What once felt overwhelming becomes transparent. You start to notice that the storm only exists when you give it attention, and when you rest as awareness, it cannot touch you. Freedom from the inner storm does not mean life becomes calm on the outside. Challenges continue, emotions still arise, but your relationship with them changes. You respond instead of react. You listen before speaking, breathe before deciding, and feel before acting. This conscious space between impulse and action is where wisdom lives. You stop being a victim of emotion and become the master of response. The outer world may shake, but inside, there is steadiness. You begin to move through life with the quiet confidence of someone who knows that peace is not found in control, but in presence. To live free from the inner storm is to live in harmony with what is. You no longer demand that life fit your expectations. You meet it as it unfolds. You learn to see beauty even in uncertainty, because awareness reveals the constant behind change. The noise of the world no longer penetrates the silence within. You realize that storms will always come and go, but the sky, your awareness, remains untouched. That recognition is liberation. It is the discovery that you are not the storm, not the clouds, not even the wind, but the vast space in which all of them rise and fall, endlessly free, endlessly still.